Okay, yeah, it's a NASA movie, fine, like we have to watch it. I don't know that they would be as open-minded as they would be otherwise.
Welcome to Voiceover. I'm your host, Heather Bigley, and I talk to people about the movies that matter, that made a mark, that led to cinematic epiphanies. And it's not always the movie you'd expect. Today's movie is from 1995, Apollo 13, directed by Ron Howard. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and won for Best Editing and Sound. Based on the 1994 book, Lost Moon, The Perilous Voyage of Apollo 13, the film details how the 3 astronauts on Apollo 13 were forced to abandon their mission to land on the moon and instead return to Earth because of an equipment failure, an explosion, that led to reduced oxygen and electrical power. The film stars Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, and Gary Sinise as astronauts, and was a huge career boost for Ed Harris, who played the Houston Control Center flight director. My guest today is Sarah Ruiz, an aerospace engineer working in private industry on a new rocket project. In December 2025, she retired from NASA's Johnson Space Center, where she worked for more than 28 years, including as a flight controller for the space shuttle from 2005 to 2011. She's also a quilter, as am I, so, Stick around after the conversation for more recommends.
Apollo 13 came out the summer of 1995, which was right before I went into my senior year. So I graduated from high school in 96. And at that time, I had already started to get pretty interested in NASA and space and was thinking about studying engineering in college. I don't remember when I heard the movie was coming out, but I remember being very excited to see it and excited that there was going to be this movie about NASA stuff and about an instance in NASA history that I actually had not heard of.
Yeah. Obviously for dramatic concerns to make a movie, what makes the story work is we have all this expectation, we're going to have this kind of adventure, and then everything starts going wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then how do we correct it? And the thing that I love about this portrayal of NASA is here are a bunch of people who are just problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
And they problem solve and problem solve and problem solve. And so there's that one scene when they're like,
well, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole rapidly.
Okay, people, listen up. People upstairs handed us this one, and we gotta come through. We gotta find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build a filter.
I kind of wish we'd stayed a little longer on the problem solving, because that to me is just, one, it says this is who NASA is, but for a lot of us, I think it also says this is who Americans are, right? Like,
Yeah.
we kind of get in there, we problem solve. So when you think of this is about NASA, does that kind of spirit or that kind of problem solving, is that something reflected in your own experience at NASA?
Oh, definitely. I think that's one of the coolest things about the movie in general is that it is pretty accurate. It is surprisingly accurate for a space movie. Like that scene is obviously dramatized, but like that is not made up. They actually had to do that. They had to figure out how to fit the square peg in the round hole with only, the things that they already knew the crew had on board. And so all of the things and all of the tense moments were really happening in real life. I just asked my husband before we got online, like, what do you think about this movie? And we both agreed that like that's one of the cool things, that even though you kind of know the story and it's a real story and you know that they're going to be okay in the end, but you're still like, oh my God, like how are they going to get through this? And yeah, the other cool thing is that it did show so much of the people on the ground and the people at NASA that are normally behind the scenes. And that is pretty accurate to my experience working at NASA over the years. Now, thankfully, I was never there or in mission control for anything as life threatening as what happened with Apollo 13. But there's definitely that sense of we are going to keep working this problem until we either solve it or we literally cannot do anything else.
Yeah, I mean what you're talking about is really important to me about the movie too, is like of course there's this, we're introduced to the astronauts first, and we're sort of, I think there's several movies about astronauts where, they're kind of cowboys or they're sort of
Yeah.
heroic or, whatever it is. And then we pivot and we see all of these people who, in whatever capacity they can, are trying to make this a success. And we see the tensions between them. And that to me is really sort of the best part of the movie, actually. It's like, Ed Harris is the character whose wife makes him a vest
Yeah.
every time they
Yeah.
have a mission. And there are these comments about the vest. And then there's these little tensions, with the guy who wants, the medical guy who's like, you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
take off all the sensors, and they take off the sensors. And like that to me just said, oh, NASA is not just like space cowboys. It's like thinkers and problem solvers.
Yeah.
So I loved it.
Yeah.
So you see this movie in 95, and then, I mean, I kind of want to know what happens in your life that you and when is the point where you go, oh, like, yes, I kind of had this wish and this goal, and then it came true, and I'm kind of living
Yeah.
out what I saw in Apollo 13.
I think I don't know, NASA stuff was kind of like all around me at that time. Ninth, 10th, 11th grade in high school, I had the opportunity to go to Kennedy Space Center in Florida and then JSC, Johnson Space Center here in Houston. I grew up in North Carolina, so I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time. And so I had the opportunity to go to both of those space centers through a school thing. And that was kind of a moment where I was like, oh, this is really cool stuff. Like I could do this. My dad was trained as an engineer, but was not working as an engineer. But I still always say like he had that engineer's mindset. And I think he had always been sort of interested in astronomy and NASA things. And so I had a little bit of that. And then visiting the space centers in those early 90s, the Hubble Space Telescope servicing mission, the first one, when we had to go up and the Hubble Space Telescope pictures were blurry and we had to send a space shuttle up and the astronauts fixed it so that it was clear, like put glasses on the telescope, basically. So that had happened in like 92, 93-ish. And then I was in high school and got to go to Houston and to Florida. And then Apollo 13 came out. And so everybody was seeing that in the movies. And it had all these big stars in it, Tom Hanks and Ed Harris and all these big names. I think it may have even gotten some Academy Award nominations for maybe more of the technical stuff. I don't remember. But so that was a very
Got
popular
9.
movie. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was a popular movie. I mean, Tom Hanks was huge in the mid 90s, right? And so it was kind of this whole pot of things that all fed into that inkling that I have that maybe I want to go be involved with NASA somehow. And so yeah, I decided I had always enjoyed math and science in school. And so, went to Georgia Tech, started in the fall of 96 to study aerospace engineering. And then the next year, I got what they call a cooperative education job, like an internship at NASA here in Houston. And then the rest went from there.
So did you have a moment when you first got to Houston as an intern where you went, this is it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. When I first came down here, my dad drove down here with me to help me get settled in, and we took the tour before I had officially started. We took the visitor center tour, and so we're on the tram going around to all the different facilities, just being really excited that like in a couple days I was, going to start as an intern and be working there.
That's so great. When I was rewatching it this time, and I want to sort of know, I know you rewatched it, like what are some things that stuck out to you that might have been different from 1995 or any earlier time? For me this time, it was Gary Sinise and Gary Sinise's character. Like there are all these different personalities amongst the astronauts. Gary Sinise is the very detail-oriented,
Mm-hmm.
very attentive, wants to get everything perfect. And there's a little tension around that where you kind of get the sense that people are like, okay. And then he gets bumped from the mission.
Yeah.
And when he comes back, he's basically going to be one of the reasons they get home safely is
Mm-hmm.
because he's had all that practice. He's paid attention. And I think this is part of one of those things, like when I was a kid, like there would be certain characters introduced, like on Top Gun, the Val Kilmer guy I always thought was the bad guy until I resaw it as an adult when I was like, no, he's the guy who follows the rules and just wants to make sure everybody lives. And Tom Cruise is kind of the bad guy, or, he's not good so I had that same experience with Gary Sinise where when I was younger, I was kind of like, come on, Gary Sinise, like, what are you doing? And then here I'm like, oh, like he saved the day. So that's one thing that changed for me. I don't know if there are things that over time have changed or shifted for you when you watch the movie.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure there's much that has changed or shifted. I've seen the movie so many times over the years that I don't think I have the benefit of being like, oh, I haven't seen this movie in 15 years. Let me go watch it again. But there's one of the scenes that I always love is just the launch sequence. I think the whole sequence around the launch that even starts with them like getting up and like going out to the launch pad and getting into the vehicle. And then it will show, the people in mission control getting ready. And I think it even shows their families, coming to watch them. I just think that's a really cool sequence. And it's nice and long. It's probably about 10 minutes. I feel like maybe if you made the movie today, you wouldn't get such a nice, long, like drawn out sequence. But I even love, like when I was back in college and stuff, I would even listen to the soundtrack, and there's like an 8 or 10 minute like track that goes along with that whole launch sequence that just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds until they lift off, and then they have an issue with one of the engines during the launch, and then it finally like ends with them in orbit. And so that scene, it's one of my favorite scenes. I've always loved it, just kind of how it shows all the different pieces of the day, not just the crew like we talked about earlier, but everybody else that had some sort of stake in the launch as well.
As you were talking, I thought to myself, Challenger was 1987.
Yeah,
right?
1986.
And, it's 1986. I had that experience of being in elementary school and watching Challenger explode on the TV screen that we were all watching. But I wonder now if that attention to the launch. I mean, obviously there's the moment with they have to portray that engine went out because it's going to influence other things in the plot. Mm-hmm. But also here's a country who has sat and watched a launch go terribly, terribly wrong. And so I wonder if they were influenced in any way by, when they decided how to show that launch.
That's a valid question. I mean, at that point, it had been less than 10 years. Challenger was less than 10 years before that. So certainly could have influenced it. I mean, I think launches are always a little tense for people who know what's really involved in it. It's always a little bit of like, hold your breath a little bit until like you're safely in orbit.
I mean, we see kind of some of the things that could go wrong, but when you're in mission control, what are your concerns? Like, what are you like?
Oh gosh, let's see. So I actually, when I worked in mission control, one of the positions that I did early on was it was in the back room during space shuttle launch, an ascent. And so, I mean, there's the whole gamut of things that can go wrong, right? From minor things like what happened in Apollo 13 in the grand scheme of things is relatively minor because it didn't, mess up their vehicle. It didn't prevent them from getting to orbit. It didn't cause them to abort and come back home. And so, those are I don't want to call them minor because they're not minor, but the impact at least is minor. But then, I mean, there's everything to the major, like, what we saw, or, those of us that are old enough, what we saw with Challenger in the 80s. I mean, you can have an explosion that, impacts the whole vehicle and takes your crew with it. And then everything in between. So there's a whole gamut of things that you're worried about. NASA does a lot of things that are just kind of you have pretty recurring training on like the things that have happened at NASA in the past and the things that have killed our crew before, and understanding not only the technical of what went wrong, like for Challenger, yes, it was the O-rings, but the whole chain of decision making that led up to that, because it's usually not just a technical problem. It is management and culture and how decisions are made and who has authority to make what decisions, and the pressure of schedules, or in the case of Challenger, they had all these VIPs that were going to come to the launch. And so there's a lot of external, not technical at all influences that happen as well.
Yeah. That kind of leads into, there are multiple movies about NASA. There's Hidden Figures, Fly Me to the Moon was most recent, I think. There's The Right Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of sort of like the NASA film canon, like how does this film compare for you? I mean, even just as a viewer, like does Apollo 13, is that still sort of like the one that you love? Or like, is there a way that you would rank some of these movies?
I think Apollo 13 is probably still at the top for me, partly because of just where I was in my own personal life when it came out. And then, like I said, I feel like it's just a very good mix of like being accurate, but in a way that is, watchable by everyone and not boring. Um, let's see, Hidden Figures, I really liked. It obviously has been
Yeah.
dramatized, but I like that one, obviously, for kind of showing a different side of NASA that I think a lot of people weren't necessarily aware of until that movie came out. I watched Fly Me to the Moon on a plane fairly recently. I mean, that one, I enjoyed it. It's completely fiction, right?
Yeah.
Like that's completely
Right.
fictionalized,
Right.
but I did enjoy the movie. Um, and then The Right Stuff I haven't seen in a really long time. I did read the book
Yeah.
and probably watched it again back when I was in high school. That is very much like astronauts are cowboys, right? And
Yeah.
I do think there's a significant difference between what the astronaut corps was and who the astronauts were in the 60s, which is what The Right Stuff depicts, and then what they are today, which is pretty different. But The Right Stuff is
Yeah.
enjoyable. Again, I mean, fairly fictionalized, I think, and sensationalized, but based in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering if we'll get, I mean, now with the Artemis missions, I am like sort of curious if what kind of films will come out of these
Yeah,
experiences, with Artemis.
yeah.
Especially because the Artemis missions seemed like, from what I know, and I don't know a lot, but they seem like it's going to be like in 2027 and 2028. Like they
Yeah,
seem to be fairly close, and like we're just going to
that
go and
what is the plan? We'll see. I should clarify. I don't currently work at NASA. I left NASA in December after being there for more than 25 years. So I realize I'm sometimes saying we because it is ingrained to me, but I should clarify. I no longer. I am an ex NASA. But yeah, no. I mean, I worked on a part of the Artemis program before I left, and so the goal is certainly to get into more of a frequent cadence and have missions launching every year or so. There's a lot that still has to be done to make that happen, but I know they're working hard on it.
I realized when I was watching this again, like, oh yeah, this happens in Houston. And I have a particular love for movies about Houston
Oh
because there are
yeah,
so few, right?
true.
Like tons of movies about New York or LA or Chicago, and then Middle America shows up. So I don't know. You relocated to Houston. How do you feel about the city? And does it matter if it shows up in the movie or not for you?
Oh,
Or is it more important that NASA shows up for you?
I mean both. I mean Houston's in this movie by default, right? Because that the Johnson Space Center is in Houston. So if you're going to make a movie with NASA, you're probably going to have some element of Houston in it. So I feel like for Apollo 13, it's more about NASA and less about wherever it happens to be located. But yeah, I mean, any other movie, if I see Houston show up somewhere, I get excited. I've lived here for 24 years now. I've lived here longer than, even in my childhood, like my hometown. So yeah, I like Houston.
Okay, well, so those movies were like based on some sort of historical event, whether or not they were completely fictionalized or not, right? But then there are movies like The Martian, or we just recently had Project Hail Mary, which was very successful.
Yeah.
People loved watching it. So those are more of those are just fully science fiction, but NASA, JSL, they come in and, they have a role, and we have these touchstones of like reality to make the film feel more plausible. So talk to me about those kinds of movies, and are you drawn generally to science fiction?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I feel like I enjoy science fiction, but I am not like a huge sci-fi buff. I loved Hail Mary. I'm so excited that it did so well because I thought it was a really fun story and fun characters. The Martian was great as well. And both of those, I think Andy Weir, the guy who wrote both of those books, he put a big effort into being fairly scientifically accurate in those books as well. I mean, obviously he had to take liberties now and there to make the story work, but I think I like those because they're obviously fiction and they're science fiction, but they're grounded in reality. I guess maybe I tend to like the ones that are a little more grounded in reality.
Yeah, if I had to choose one, I'd probably choose The Martian for me. So
I think
anyway.
The Martian is probably, in my mind, the better movie for what it's worth. When I went to see Hail Mary, I had read the book only a month or two before, but it was one of those like, well,
Okay.
this movie's coming out, I need to go ahead and read the book. And there's so much in the book, and I mentioned he goes for the technical detail. I wondered, seeing the movie, if you hadn't read the book, would you understand everything that's going on? Because the movie just felt like it was moving at breakneck pace compared to like the slow burn that things happen in the book. So yeah.
And I think that might be a difference for me too, because my husband and I read The Martian. And then when I heard the movie was coming out, I was very excited because I was like, I want to see how they adapt this. I didn't really get into Project Hail Mary, and then the movie came out, and I did feel somewhat confused by like, okay, what's the science here? Like, how are we getting to where we're going?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you've actually seen this movie a ton, and I'm wondering, you have kids. Is this a movie that you introduced to your children, and do you watch it as a family? I'm kind of curious about that experience.
I'm not sure we've ever sat down and watched it start to finish. I have seen it many times, not as much in recent years, but sometimes it's one of those, if I ever see it on TV, I'll just stop on that channel and leave it there. And so I feel like my kids have probably seen bits and pieces of it, and I don't know that we've sat down and watched it start to finish. Frankly, they would probably eye roll a little bit because they're like, oh, like, okay, yeah, it's a NASA movie, fine, like we have to watch it. I don't know that they would be as open-minded as they would be otherwise. But no, my kids are 13 and 10. And so we have just now kind of started to graduate from like the Disney movies and into other things. But we've been talking about, well, what can we go see now? Like our whole family, we all went to see Project Hail Mary because I was like, this is going to be okay for a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my last question would be, do you recommend this movie to other people? And if you do, what do you say to them about it?
I mean, absolutely. I recommend it. I think I've already said a lot of the things. Like, it's a very well done movie. I think it's good from start to finish, showing like this is a real story that they show in a good way. It shows like the contribution that everybody had to the mission. I mean, yes, the movie's 30 years old at this point, but I think it holds up pretty well. It doesn't have like special effects that look dated or anything like that. Yeah, fun fact, they actually filmed a decent portion of the movie on like a plane that simulates zero gravity. So like when it looks like they're in zero gravity, they actually are in zero gravity. And then of course, if it's me talking to somebody I know, I'd be like, well, this is a movie that is very very key to like my life path. And so, you should check it out.
Thanks to Sarah for talking to me about how Apollo 13 helped her imagine herself at NASA. I can't name a comparable film for me and my life, but I'm like really delighted that this film propelled her to her career. Movies matter. We mentioned a couple NASA space films that you might want to watch if you haven't already: The Right Stuff, Fly Me to the Moon, The Martian, Project Hail Mary, and check out our episode on Hidden Figures with Simranjeet Singh. But I have a few more recommendations, and I'm leaning into the problem-solving plot of Apollo 13, and only one of these is sci-fi. Now, some of you might say that the Hollywood plot of the last 50 years is based in logical linear narrative theory. You'd be right. Pick up any screenwriting manual, and it will tell you that the basics of Hollywood plot construction is that the script should go from problem to solution to bigger problem to more desperate solution to bigger problem until something explodes or your main character is hanging off a bridge 100 feet above, roaring whitecaps. But some genres are a better fit for that than others. So, the first thing I'm going to recommend today is The Great Escape from 1963, starring Steve McQueen. He plays Captain Virgil Hiltz, the go-it-alone American who nevertheless joins the rest of the Allies in a German prison camp to execute this complex escape plan to free hundreds of prisoners over one night. The film is especially famous for McQueen's motorcycle ride across the Bavarian countryside outside the border town of Füssen. The film is iconic. Scenes, dialogue, and the music have been quoted in Hogan's Heroes, Get Smart, Seinfeld, Chicken Run, The Parent Trap, Reservoir Dogs, and Charlie's Angels. Another problem-solving film that's worth your time is Moneyball from 2011, adapted from the statistical analysis of the Oakland A's 2002 season, captured in the book Moneyball, The Art of Winning an Unfair Game. Essentially, the book and the movie ask, how do lesser-resourced teams win against the New York Yankees, which only just last year spent over $300 million on payroll? If the rich teams can buy the best players, why bother? So, how do working-class teams get a fighting chance? Math. Or not math. Is statistics math? At any rate, Brad Pitt plays the statistician who has the data and slowly builds a team against conventional wisdom and traditionalists that makes it all the way to the division playoffs. It's an edge-of-your-seat, nail-biter sports film as well as an emotional roller coaster ride. And my last recommend today is from 2007, I Am Legend, starring Will Smith as a scientist trapped in post-apocalyptic Manhattan, chatting up the mannequins, scavenging canned foods, and fighting zombies alongside his trusty German shepherd. My favorite line, I was saving that bacon. This film is tightly written and has enough tension to cut glass, so you might be surprised to know that they went into production without a script. While the CGI lions haven't held up, the film continues to deliver as Smith's character realizes the zombies might be more human than he's actually comfortable admitting. Also, Will Smith's daughter, Willow, joined him on screen to play his character's daughter in flashback sequences. That's our show today, guys. Voiceover is a production of BYU Radio and is edited by Spencer Boyer, with additional post-production support from Nick Levitt and Ashton Rowan. I'm Heather Bigley, your host. Check us out on YouTube.